Hey everyone, we're checking out Lian Li's stuff at Computex. So we checked in with Lian Li last in December of last year, and we actually saw this case when we were out there. So this is now in more of its final form. Not a whole lot has changed versus our video. There are some changes, but the more interesting stuff from the O11D Evo XL, to us at least, would be the SUP-01. So this is a new venture for Lian Li where they're trying a different, basically, sizing of case, goes for a narrower in this dimension approach, and actually some really interesting layout with the fans as well. So it does 6 fans on the backside over here maximally, and then it's got a front mounted GPU up here. So we're going to talk about this in some more depth. Back this way though, there's 2 other cases. So there's O11D RGB, and then there's an O11 Vision.
Evo RGB.
Evo RGB.
Yeah.
Jameson,
yeah.
Lian Li CEO, he actually joined last time as well.
Yeah.
And we'll be jumping in throughout the video with details when I forget them, because there's a lot of stuff here. Evo RGB, and then the O11 Vision, no D.
Yeah.
No O11D. I've learned that not only does D stand for dynamic, it stands for their power. so Roman's not on that one. So there's the cases. There's a couple other things back here. We'll just show B-roll of them, but some LCD fans that are really interesting. We're going to talk a little bit about how the construction works for those, in terms of routing the cables and getting the screen to float, basically. And then last up is coolers, and this is where we're going to spend our focus for the beginning here. Before that, this video is brought to you by Arctic and the Liquid Freezer 2 liquid coolers, now including an ARGB model in the lineup. The Liquid Freezer series has been a top performer in our benchmark for years now, and Arctic has continually fine-tuned its products even post-launch with things like kits for Ryzen, ARGB fans for new flare, and new radiator sizes. The company also has its brand new MX6 thermal paste on the market now. Learn more at the links in the description below. For the coolers, it's just Lian Li's going with the name GA2. There's 3 that are out right now. A couple different models to talk about. Pricing is, I think it's 150, 170, and 250. And I'll walk you all through them. The baseline here is a GA2 Trinity. And then over here, this is the one I wanted to spend more time on. This is a GA2 Performance.
Trinity Performance.
Trinity Performance.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep dropping parts of the name until you make the name simpler.
Yeah.
So, Trinity Performance is actually the main differences here. And Jameson, I definitely want to get you to jump in on the pump when we start talking about it. But main things, so this is, Lian Li's going for high performance specifically with this. Most interestingly, the fin stack here, they're doubling them up. So you notice there's the 12 water channels. That's this sort of wider white channel here, and then in between is where you have the normal fin stack, and we'll get some footage of them side by side or something, but you can see there's a separate split. This piece of metal right down the middle of that fin stack is what's allowing the doubling up. It requires more static pressure to push through that because you have more impedance, but there's also a ton more surface area. We've seen this before. I don't remember what coolers I've seen it on. It should help with thermals. I asked Jameson earlier if you did a like for like in any testing, like everything the same, just single versus doubled up fins. Did you have a number or anything you want to share?
Yeah, it's like 2.5 to 3 degrees.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that's on what kind of heat load is that?
Yeah, like 300 watts.
Okay.
Yeah.
So, and for anyone who hasn't watched our cooler content lately, 2.5 or 3 degrees, if it manifests that way in our testing, that's actually a lot. I mean, that's kind of the difference between you're at the top or the bottom of a grouping of liquid coolers or a grouping of air coolers. That comes from, that's the like for like doubling up. There are other changes. This is wider, so it's a 130 mil width rather than a 120. Typically, you have a 120 fan or something, that's kind of your approximate width. 130 allows for accommodation of the 12 channels for liquid and also the doubling up of the surface area. So there are some pump differences.
Yes, the pump motor size, it's a lot bigger. It's still like the 6-way pump, but it's the overall, the size is different. It's a lot bigger. It can go up to 4,200 RPM.
Right.
And then also like the impeller size compared to the normal Trinity one. Also the previous gen, it's being increased by about like 30% or something.
And the base non-performance SKU is 3,200 RPM?
3,200
max
RPM.
pump speed?
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. We were talking about how the channeling within this is different. And I've asked actually several times if I can take various products here apart, and the answer was no.
Yeah.
So we're not going to be able to take it apart today. But How are you routing the liquid in this?
Yeah, so the pump is actually, the direction is facing the radiator so that it pulls the water out through the two sides,
Right.
and then force in the liquid inside into the middle. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah, and then some of the bigger changes with the water channel in between is like the previous gen. I mean, it has a lot of water resistance because the channels was circular and also narrower. And this one we opened up the channels also make sure it's straight.
Oh, actually, I didn't mention the thickness of the radiator. Thickness is 32 millimeters.
Yes, and the fan is 28. So in total, you're looking at 60. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah. So in terms of like, because it's a performance, so everything's bigger. So the reason why we separate two lines between the regular Trinity and the performance, because like we want people who out there for performance, you know, you should have a bigger case to fit in this. Whereas if you just wanted more simpler stuff, then you go for the smaller one.
Right, and there is another one too. There was the Trinity SL, is that right?
Yeah, so it's just the difference between the fans included.
Right. Yeah. And these fans on the Performance are not an existing line, so Lian Li is doing a custom set of fans for those.
Yeah.
This one at $170, it ends up being $20 more than the baseline next to it. And the $250 model, so this gets into territory where you're paying for looks, which is a lot of computing right now. So going with an LCD on the top, we've got some footage from around here with the screen. So anyway, LCD is the centerpiece for that one.
Also, it's a Asetek Gen 8.
That's right, yeah. So Asetek Gen 8 for the OEM. The reasoning for the Trinity naming, confusingly, is not the amount of fans. It's the amount of pump caps you get.
Yes.
So there's 3 of these. We have shots of them, but I guess this is the dual infinity, is that right, mirror? So then this one you were calling Dazzle, right? So dual infinity, Dazzle, and then
black hole.
Black hole, which you can see over here as well. Yeah. So okay, so I'm gonna move over to talking about this. This is a SUP-01, which stands up for stand-up platform. So most interesting elements of this, it is narrower in this dimension, but when Lian Li was walking us through it, other than the GPU, which we're gonna come back to, the sort of primary point that I thought was worth bringing up is Lian Li's vision for this is you bring air in through the front with the GPU. If it's a flow through especially, or if it's ejecting air out the sides here and able to force some back, Lian Li's vision is that the air comes in through this back channel. So you've got a compartmentalization here. You have a short chamber on this side. You're not really gonna fit an air cooler in there of any reason anyway. So you're going for an AIO probably. And then on this back side, air flows through the GPU. And currently they've actually got it configured so this set of 3 fans is exhausting. That's a lot of mesh.
Yeah.
So spitting air out here, and then they're taking air in here. How this works out in reality, it depends on the pressure you're dealing with and the flow. In theory, you have intake at the front. Some of it will get split and end up in the main chamber of the case, but not a lot of it. Most of the pressure from these fans is going to pull the air through this first set, come out. And honestly, I don't think there's going to be a ton of recirculation of that because if you're at a higher speed, it's just going to get rid of it. And these are not split centrally. So they're only split this dimension. I personally, if we were testing this, I think one of the things I'm probably going to ask Patrick to set up is a test the split down the center to see how isolating the 2 chambers does, because they currently have the AIO set up in this back set of 3 fans as intake. It's pushing air into the board. There's, I don't know, do you know the spacing top of your head from the panel to the back of the board?
Like, I think it's like 5 centimeter.
Okay.
Yeah.
So about 5 centimeters space potentially between back of the board and the cooler. The only concern I brought up with that was depending on the speed of the fans, you potentially end up with some noise, either wind noise or rattle noise. So the rattle would be dependent on the distance from the mesh, and the wind noise would be dependent on the speed of the fans as that wind hits the motherboard tray. And that, anecdotally, haven't heard anything here. We'd have to test it, obviously, to see. For the rest of this, so the cable ends up, for the HDMI or DisplayPort, ends up routed underneath. And I think we have some footage of it. I did put myself through the user experience test, and it wasn't too bad. It's a little annoying to plug in up here at the front. But removing it was easy. Routing it wasn't too bad up until plugging it in. You'll want to ideally look at where your ports are before trying to connect that. So this routes internally, comes out back here, and they've got kind of the fractal torrent thing going on that we liked, which was, and we'll just use B-roll for it, but which was on the back. There's a cable channel, so there's some pre-installed Velcro ties, and you can route the I/O from the back of the board down that channel, and then you can route the display cable out the other side. The entire back of the case is perforated. There's a couple other small features too before I come back to the card, but there's this like mirrored metal box down here. Yeah. That's removable, so there's a couple screws in there, you can pull it out. It's for some flair, I guess, because otherwise you've got the GPU in the front, so it's kind of barren without it. There's a pre-included riser cable, and they've gone for this sort of, I mean, I call it a height-inspired design where they've got the housing on the riser, but an LED.
Yes, it's important. Yeah.
So there's an LED in there. Yeah. Back to the more interesting element though, so this front-mounted GPU, it's sort of the ultra-fine approach to mesh in the front. See that on a lot of cases these days, including some of the Lian series. And there is a somewhat adjustable height. Yeah. So you can clamp the card in depending on the length of the card. I guess the only thing I would...
Also the left-right adjustment. Some GPU design will have the design more towards the right or more towards the left, so you want to make sure that the GPU is always at the center.
Right.
Yeah.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
That's interesting. Okay.
It's a logo. Yeah.
Yes, yeah. I'm aware of that. Thank you. Is it just a single switch?
Yeah.
Remind me the pricing on this one.
149.
149.
Yeah.
The plan is to include 3 black fans.
Yeah.
Okay. And then that'll be second half of this year.
Yes.
Closer to September, October, I guess.
October.
Okay. Yeah. This case we already talked about in a lot of detail. I'll leave you all to the December video for that. That's the O11D Evo XL. And I was waiting for you to correct me, but I think I got the name right. Yeah. And over here, the RGB and the Vision. So I'm going to start on the Vision. I think it's a little more interesting. So the main angle here is Lian Li's going for 3 sheets of glass, and they're trying to eliminate to the extent possible the gap and try and get it as flush as they can. So this is just like all the others, pull back.
I will help you out.
Yeah, let's do that. Main detail here is one that I think at a consumer level is normally not too noticeable, but the support to hold all the pieces together without having significant shock and vibe issues when shipping, especially a built system.
Yes.
So that's kind of the unique challenge with this one. Internally, the tooling's different from the O11s previously. Yeah. And the motherboard tray ends up being chamfered on the top and the side, which gives it a little bit of a different look. And is this removable? Or I'll let you do it. Yeah. At least I won't be the one who breaks the show sample.
Yeah.
These are the chamfered edges. They've got large cable cutouts. One of the focuses actually on some of these cases has been increasing cable management space. And one of the ways that Lian Li is doing that is by shoving the power supply out the back of the case a little bit.
The invisible space.
Yeah, right. Yes. So, and the presence of the cable is going to force you off the wall enough where you still have some room for that to breathe. So 15 mil extra space frees up some of the space in here internally. And this PCMR is just a one-off, as I understand it, or is it's not every case, right, with the PCMR tag.
No, it's going to be every single case.
Is it actually every single case?
Yeah.
Oh, I thought you were saying it was like one.
No, it's every single case.
Okay, well.
Yeah.
I guess I will say hello to Pedro then, PCMR. There's a lot of familiarities to the O11 series, but the tooling's different, and the main focus, I guess, is over on this piece up here in the front, offering some structural support. So this is bound to the glass via adhesive, and then it's also magnetic.
Yes.
And that's what binds everything together. Pricing again on this?
139.
And 0 included fans, or
0? Yeah.
0 fans, 130, 140, and was that a September target?
Yeah, September.
Okay.
Yeah.
Another difference too is back here now there's room for 2 120s. Yeah. And additionally, the motherboard tray, and we can't show this on this model.
Can be shuffled up and down. Yeah.
Right. So this hole up here is where that screw ends up here. You offset the entire board up, a couple inches almost,
Yeah, the design is shared with the Evo XL.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and that was a kind of a cool feature.
Yeah.
No vertical GPU on this one, so it keeps it a little simpler.
Yeah, and then user might argue that without the top exhaust, like the thermal might be a concern, and we actually also think of that. So that's why like we opens up the bottom of the case to make sure like the airflow is good enough from the bottom. Yeah.
Yeah, I would have to test it to comment on it, but realistically, there's not much of a difference whether it's coming from the front or from the side. I mean, obviously you've got a turn you're making where you lose pressure, but there's still access to air in two locations, which is normally all you really need to make air move through a case. So, plus bottom intake, spacing at the bottom, it's a little shallow where the filter is.
Yeah, that's why we open up the space.
Right. Otherwise, it's pretty standard. With the filter out of there, it's standard.
Yeah.
This is the O11
Evo RGB.
Evo RGB.
Yeah.
There's no D on this one?
O11D Evo RGB. There's D. Yeah.
You
got me.
See,
yeah.
I thought it was O11D.
Yeah.
All right. So this one's got two RGB strips. They're L-shaped strips. There's one at the top. There's one lower down, and they've got this white coating on top of it, which we were talking about this from the streamer, similar to the streamer cables.
Yeah.
And then there's a sheet of aluminum here, and this, I guess, removes separately.
Yeah, it's they share the same design, basically the same design as the Evo. So there are some minor.
Okay.
Let me do it. Oh, it's very tight. Yeah, don't worry about it. Yeah, yeah. It's prototype. Yeah.
Does pop out with that still there?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's the power.
So yeah, it's basically all the features that the Evo has. This one has it too, with the add-on of the RGB. Also, this is the most wanted features that user wants. It's
you said that to me.
Remove the pillars.
That was interesting because that is not something I ever thought about or was concerned about. So apparently, a lot of people, I guess, wanted the O11D Evo original front support here.
So yeah, some users actually remove themselves and then customize the glass themselves.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, and then otherwise, they're doing the same thing as over here where the back compartments, so the power supply and the drives are both sticking out of the back. To me, technically, this is dimensional space, but I guess it's not volumetric space.
Yeah.
So you avoid some of that at least, unless you're going to start calculating volume for that area. The only detail we're really missing here is pricing again.
169.
Okay.
170.
Yeah. All right, last piece is the fans. So LCD fans are pretty interesting. We actually talked about these in December, but I don't think they were ready yet.
No, it's not ready yet.
So for these, I guess first thing to know, there's two packs. I'm going to start with the price because it's kind of a big number for people who are buying fans. It's a pack of 3 plus a controller, and the controller is critical here. And that was it one you were deciding, right, between
129 or 139.
depending on how the costs land.
Yeah.
So somewhere in that range. And then there's a single pack as well. Price is TBD on that. Basically, the way it would work is you need the controller for the LCD to function. So to get the controller, you'd have to buy the 3-pack with the controller. Economically, I don't think it would make sense to sell a single pack with a controller because you're spending like most of the money on the controller at that point. So, and then you would buy single packs to expand it. So obviously very expensive for fans. You are paying for looks at this point, and I think everybody knows that. So the LCD itself, so this is using a TPI bearing, and it's an FDB. Actually, I think these are both using TPI FDBs. The difference is the LCD fan, so Lian Li has to float the screens that obviously you don't have a rotational issue. They also have to consider the screen presence on each side of the fan, depending on if the user has a push or a pull.
Yeah, because there will be reverse blade.
Yeah, right.
So if you do reverse blade, then even if it's intaking the air, then the screen will always.
That's right. Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
You're gonna do black and white.
Yeah, black and white, reverse and normal orientation for impeller. Yeah.
And then for the interior structure, we're gonna try and get like a 3D diagram from Lian Li before we publish, but stop me when you have something to add in. From what I recall, you were saying you got the screen kind of floating.
Yeah.
You've got a wider channel
for the motor and also the bearing, so that it has a hollow space in between to feed through the cable all the way through the bearing, motor, and
then
through
the
the
back.
frame. Yes.
Right. And then it just routes out the back like normal, I
Yes.
guess. Okay. So we don't have software we can demo yet. These are all baked in basically on these. But let's talk about it, what your vision is for it anyway, because the software here is, I said this to Jameson when we were talking about it, software is going to make or break this kind of product because there's a lot of RGB software that is nightmarish to work with. So what is your vision for how your users are going to manage this? Because it's all going to go through a controller,
Yeah.
which should simplify the physical connection. How do you view the software playing out?
Yeah, so the software will be two zone. One is to control the LCD. One is to control the lights. Yeah. So the LCD that we imagine we will have like the animation also like different give the MP4 that you can upload to actually feed through the 3 screen at the same time. I mean, some people might use 1, some people might use 2. So that can be customizable.
Okay.
Also, the most difficult part for this kind of fan is that because different than the regular LCD AO, that this will be really depends on the orientation, so that we have to customize all different kind of animation to make sure that right now it's going horizontally, right? We have to also consider when it's doing vertically, right?
Right.
Also different orientation of the animation.
We're talking about the cables too. So you were mentioning how there's basically this is easiest to view for the camera. So these cables that snap onto the edge of the housing here. You were talking about the basically start to end flow of the animation as well.
Yeah, because each fan has what we call a communication IC within the fan.
Right.
So with that thing that we can actually to ID each fan, so that the first fan that connect to the cable doesn't have to be the first fan on the UI.
Right.
And then so that we can also we kind of like
Does it automatically ID them?
yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, and then we can also change the orientation of the cable so that you can hook up this end or the other end. So a user can literally put the fans in first and then decide which orientation their cables wanted to go later.
What was the performance spec on these in terms of? So I think you said 0.45 amps.
Yeah.
And RPM max.
RPM max for the regular one without LCD is 2100, whereas this one is 1800.
Okay.
Because the impeller size is a lot smaller,
Right.
and then if you go up a lot faster, then the noise will get higher. But I mean, our goal is to have we imagine that when user build up this their system with the TL, doesn't matter if it's a TL LCD. It will be a combination, which means that you will have fewer LCD because you don't want your system with all the LCD. It's kind of like not really making a sense. So,
also, the amount of logic involved at that point just to make your computer glow is insane.
Yeah.
So normally I don't have someone from the company join me on camera, so I'll throw this question out there for you too. Working on this, the LCD fans, what ended up being the biggest challenge or pain in the ass trying to get it to work the way you wanted it?
Yeah, so first it's like, I mean, figure out the structure is one, because we have to really think of like how to make the floating platform to not actually interfere with the impeller spinning. So that's one. The other is the noise, because at first we start with ball bearing, but ball bearing when it's lower RPM has this some like whining sounds,
like
which
resonance.
really annoying.
Yeah.
So we really go back to the bearing company and actually have them to specialize special made FDB to make sure, because right now it's running, it's a very low RPM, you don't hear very dramatic noise, right?
Right.
So that's a big challenge. Also the challenge is to actually have the animation to run 3 screens at the same time.
Yeah. What specifically was difficult with that? Was it on the software side or was it on the hardware side?
Software side, because like when you do the software, like you have to consider 3 screens at the same time. Also consider the orientation. So you need to have a so many versions of that animation.
It's like recursive screen programming for your fans. So that recaps it though. I mean, so bunch of new cases. There's several variations of the GA2 cooler, but the one I'm most interested in testing is going to be the performance model, of course, as always. And to the extent possible, we'll try and do some like-for-like comparisons, at least non-like-for-like between the models. But that's going to be it for the Lian Li one. And Jameson, thank you for joining me, as always. Yeah. And we will see you all in the next video.